Welcome to Two Bid SoCon. I'm Jack Gold, joined as always by Matt St. Charles. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I told you before we started recording, I was trying to keep up with the games at work last night, and I got scolded a little bit. So scrambling to keep up with it all today, but I think we'll be all right. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I may have to go into may have to get in the marketing mode here and get us some advertisers or something, so you can just quit your job, so we can
Oh,
make
I
some
love
money
that
off
idea.
this. What do you say? Yeah, big
Shout out
night last
Ingles.
night. Yeah. Big night last night in the SoCon. Top 6 teams all played each other. Really fun night. This episode, we're going to cover that, cover all the games. Not a whole lot of special stuff here today because it was just a night full of content. I mean, I was on Twitter all last night. I might have made 100 tweets last night. Like, I kept on seeing stuff cool, and I was like, oh, I got to say something about that. So, had a problem, had my screen time was boosted up. But first, let me start out with this. Shout out to the former SoCon coaches coaching college basketball right now, specifically Lamont Paris, 2-0 all time against John Calipari. Big win over Kentucky, who's a national championship contender at this point. Big win there. Shout out Wes Miller at Cincinnati having a big year. I did the Blue Ribbon story on Cincinnati and talked to Wes Miller and thought they were going to be good this year. And like they have a lot of talent there. But let me start with some trivia that I know there's no shot you're going to get. It was hilarious. I had to share with one of my buddies too. Lamont Paris has 2 that most people know of, but he actually has 3 former SoCon players at the South Carolina program. Can you name those 3 players that are on this? Go to the directory. They're there. Who's there?
I can only give you BJ Mack. That's it.
Hurt my soul. BJ Mack, by the way, let's shout out BJ Mack too. He's been awesome this year for South Carolina. I thought he would be a good player. Like, obviously he's athletic, has the size. Like, I didn't think he would fit as a 5, which he has, but I thought for sure, like, he made sense in the SEC as a guy that could come in and contribute, maybe take a step down, but he's been everything he was. But BJ Mack, Stephen Clark from the Citadel's there too. If you remember him from last year, he averaged 16 a game. I did not like him moving to South Carolina just because he was very good at the mid-major level and wasn't really a good, maybe been fine, but there was a moment in that game last night he got picked on bad. But number 3 player, former Chattanooga guard, I saw on the broadcast, Tata Strickland is a graduate assistant at South Carolina. And if you have any, Tata Strickland was with Lamont here. He was like a sophomore, and all of a sudden his name disappeared off the roster whenever Dan Earl got here in the summer. Like, I think he was at the press conference and everything when Dan Earl was inducted at Chattanooga. And in the summer, all of a sudden, Brody Robinson was announced as a player. And that's the roster spot. Is like, well, Tata Strickland's no longer there. I'm watching on ESPN. They're all focusing on Lamont, and I'm like, is that who I think it is back there? So Tata Strickland just quit basketball and went and got a grad assistant job at South Carolina. So shout out him. Him and Lamont must have some sort of connection because he probably played a little too much on those Chattanooga teams. He was young and figuring things out and should not have played when he did. But shout out him. I thought that was such a random
Maybe Lamont
nerd
felt a
find.
little bad. Maybe Lamont felt a little bad. He's like, dang, I can't just ditch Tata like this. I gotta take him with me.
Because he was a guy I was like, oh, there's no shot he's playing for Dan Earl. Game did not fit at all. And he got a grad assistant job at South Carolina out of it, a staff that looks pretty good. Lamont is in the conversation probably, or will be, whenever South Carolina's ranked next week. He'll be in the conversation for National Coach of the Year for that turnaround that they've made in the past 2 years. So shout him out. I don't know if I can always say I was the biggest believer that it was going to happen, especially after last year, but big year for him. Wes Miller too. But specifically Lamont and my guy, just not really my guy, but Tata Strickland. Tata Strickland to me was almost like my Russell Jones Jr. Coming into the year. I was not the biggest fan of his minutes. But let's get back to actual SoCon play. We're going to start off with talking about maybe it was between a couple games for the game of the night, but the game of the night had to be UNCG versus Western Carolina. Went to overtime. UNCG came out on top, 85-82. Insane performance from Mikal Brown-Jones, who's on a tear right now. He had 39 points, 9 rebounds. And then Vontarius Woolbright for Western Carolina had 34 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists. Can't put the loss on him, really. Unreal game. Just unreal performances, really. Like, it wasn't to me, it didn't feel like, oh, these are and they are two of the best teams, but it didn't feel like, oh, these two of the best teams are playing against each other. It was two of the best dudes are going at it against each other right now. Let's talk about the player of the year race between them, because I think now Mikal Brown-Jones has gone for 39, 39, and 29 in the last 3 games. It's a race, even though somehow Woolbright lost. Someone gained on him after a 35-15 night, but that's what happens when Mikal Brown-Jones goes off. What are your thoughts on that? Is it still as obviously Woolbright to you, or is there more discussion than we're thinking?
Right now, I'd probably still give it to Woolbright, but the conversation is getting closer, and you have to consider the fact that, like, as much as we love Western Carolina, they are on a 3-game slide right now, and 2 of those losses came at home. So, as great as Woolbright has been individually, that he hasn't. I don't want to blame it on him, but others haven't picked it up around him. So now they're sitting at 4-3 in the conference, where Mikal Brown-Jones is averaging something like 35, whatever it is, in these last 3 games, and UNCG is sitting at 6-1 in the conference. So there's certainly a discussion now. The good thing is there's a lot of ball left to play, and eventually it'll start to work itself out. Woolbright's going to have to really help Western get back on the right track. So I'd still give it to Woolbright, but the conversation is so close.
So I had some guys in my mentions last night, some UNCG guys. People can't put aside biases, and I understand there is biases that we're saying it's Mikal Brown-Jones. Give me him all day. He's more efficient. Someone said he's way more important, which is not true. They're both Woolbright and Mikal Brown-Jones are equally as important to their team's success. Like, there's no, oh, this guy's way more important than this guy. And the main argument for them was Mikal Brown-Jones, his efficiency. And his efficiency is unreal right now. He's shooting 58% from 3.
It's crazy.
So maybe I need Mikal Brown-Jones. He doesn't ever take threes like that. He's had 4 and 3 and 8 attempts the last 3 games. But before that, 0 attempts, 4 attempts, 1 attempt, 2 attempt, 1 attempt, 0, 0, 2, 1, 0, 0, 2, 1. Like, bro, he's got to start letting that thing fly if he's shooting 60% almost from 3. And he did last night. He shot 4 for 8. Just such a random, like, occurrence. Him just being Steph Curry at the big man spot this year for them. But then again, the efficiency, his usage rate isn't as high as Woolbright's, and also Woolbright blows him away in rebounds and assists. So they both have their spots. But I'm with you, and I would still give Woolbright the number 1 spot for Player of the Year. If the year ended today, I'd give him number 1 spot. But tomorrow it might be a 1A, 1B type situation. I mean, it's really getting close, especially with this tear he's been on. I mean, he's shooting crazy percentages, dominating the game with his physicality. I don't know if there's a guy in the league that can really match up with him. Maybe Chor, maybe Alexis. Yeah. I mean, they both are the closest thing to him defense that can really match up with him defensively. But yeah, he's been unreal. And that's crazy to say that, like, with the year Woolbright's having, that someone else is coming up there with him, where Woolbright's putting up historic numbers on the year. That's the main thing I have from that game. I mean, one last thing I guess we'll say, because obviously there's things we could analyze about that game. Maybe Western's inability at times. They were down like 13, but they did come back, and that shows they're just a mature team to me, because they did that against Samford too. Came back, guys hit big shots. But really, I had mentions to, do we need to worry about Western Carolina? And because they've lost 3 straight, that's the craziest thing is we were talking about they're the best 2 teams with Samford. We were saying that earlier this year. And Furman obviously is in that conversation healthy, but they hadn't been healthy. But is it time to panic now? They're 4-3, but here's what I would say. And this is what I said last night too. Loss number 1, they played the hottest team in the country, maybe. I mean, in the SoCon for sure, Samford. And at that point, for sure. Next game, they get Furman, who just got a warm-up game against VMI for the first time with their fully healthy team that was picked to win the conference by many. Third game now, they get Mikal Brown-Jones going for 40 points on their head, hitting 4 threes, dominating the game, rebounding, everything. He just is such a presence. So, no, I'm not worried. That's a crazy hard schedule, how you get the top 3 teams other than y'all in 3 straight games. I don't know how that works out. But, no, they could sweep the rest of SoCon play, and I wouldn't be surprised. But it will show some maturity if they can bounce back from it.
Only thing that I'd like to point out that somewhat scares me about that stretch is Samford and UNCG were both at home. So now you sit there and think, well, you're going to have to go on the road and beat, likely both of those teams to be in contention for that top seed. So that's just going to make things tougher for them down the road. But I'm definitely not panicking yet.
And I agree with that a little bit because Western Carolina historically has not been, I don't want to hate on them, but it's not like a tough place to play historically.
Mm-hmm.
And they've gotten some crowds the past few games. And I saw Western Carolina fans saying, oh, we did it in this year and they lost the 2 games and then people stopped coming. And that's kind of been the thing. And Justin Gray's gotten crowds there and now they've dropped 2 big games. And granted, they've been against really good teams and those Western Carolina guys have fought. But do fans that aren't really in tune with the basketball team because of there's no real historic success there, do they stop coming? And that's probably the biggest thing for Justin Gray the rest of the way is to continue to make Western a tough place to play. Because if it's not, then yeah, they'll lose more home games because it's just so tough to watch. And that'll be a transition into our next one. Samford's 17-game win streak over at Furman. Furman wins 78-68. And a big part of that was playing at Furman. That crowd is awesome. It always is for big games. They show up because Furman is a great program. Bob Ritchie's a great coach. It's just tough to play there. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I picked Furman in that game simply because I felt like Samford was due. I mean, 17-game winning streak is so tough, and then you have to go on the road to a now healthy Furman, like you said earlier, that just got their warm-up game against VMI. I was just super impressed for them to hold Samford to 68 points. Like, that's one of the top scoring teams in the country, so that's very impressive. Most teams, they see Samford's pace and they start to just want to slow the game down, but Furman kind of did the opposite of that. And whether it was off a made basket or if Furman created a turnover, they were just out in transition. They didn't want to give Samford time to get set, because when Samford can set that press, it's not easy to break. So Furman was getting the ball out of the net. They were making 1, 2, 3 quick passes, and they were down the court taking basically a transition shot already. So that was pretty impressive. Marcus Foster is back in a big way for them. 2 double-doubles already in I think his 3 games back. So, it's very impressive for Samford. I definitely wouldn't, be panicking if I'm Samford. You still are on top of the league, and you're not going to win them all. So, yeah, that was a fun game, but holding Samford to 68 is very impressive.
And you talk about Foster. I thought Foster could have been a lot better. I mean, I'm looking at his stats. He was 7 for 17. I remember seeing some bunnies he missed. I thought he could have made, and he's a great player and put up good stats, but I thought he could be even better. I mean, he had 22 and 11, and I'm sitting here thinking he could have played a better game. Not being overly hard. I'm not being hard on him here. Like, he's just that level of player. But yeah, I thought the most impressive thing was, and that's probably the recipe to success, is Furman played at their pace, and they took it to them. I mean, think of a team. I can think of Chattanooga. Chattanooga played at their pace, and they had that game. They were right in that game up until when they just went ice cold there late in the second half. I think that's maybe the solution, is just to, because if you try to run slow offense and the other team is waiting for a miss to go and get, a bucket in 5 seconds, that's just hard to keep up with another team when they're just scoring so fast. And you're having these slow, methodical possessions, one and done. I don't know. I think that might be the solution. Now, granted, not everyone has Marcus Foster, Alex Williams, JP McGee's, even Carter
Right.
Witt. At times, they don't have that level of player, and that's a thing I really want to talk about with Furman, is they kind of have their own version of slight throwback of the Warriors' death lineup. It's my favorite lineup, I think, in the league. They go no bigs. They go Marcus Foster, Alex Williams, JP McGee's, Carter Witt, PJ Smith. I've seen them run that out there a few times, and I think I love the thought of that. I loved, the Warriors were the first team to do really, really and truly go positionless. And that started a whole wave in basketball of, everyone was trying to draft a Draymond Green and whatnot in the NBA. I like it because who are they starting at the 5 right now? Tyrese Huey. What does he bring? Just some physicality, and he's listed 6'6". And I like Huey. He plays hard, but I mean, they're guarding him like he's Ben Simmons, and he can't shoot either. Like, granted, there's minutes for him. Don't get me wrong, but I think finishing games, unless you're playing, I don't know that. I think Williams can bang with Mikal Brown Jones, but I don't think Foster. I don't think Williams has the length, and I think Foster maybe. I'm not sure. I would love to see that matchup. But I don't think there's not a Jake Stevens in this league that if you're just too small, there's nobody like that anymore where they'll just finish right over you. I love that lineup because that is as good as it gets offensively. You got everyone can shoot it. Pretty much everyone can drive it. Smith probably isn't the best driver, and Witt at times. I don't know, dude. That's just such a good lineup. And I was super impressed at times when I saw that. Garrett Heen continues to be a guy that just leaves so much to be desired. I keep on thinking he's going to do something, and now they're guarding him like early in the year when I kind of took back a little bit of words on him and said he had impressed me in some games shooting the 3 well. Well, now he catches the ball at the high post or at the top of the key, and he's just immediately looking to go hand it off to someone. Chor was sitting underneath the basket guarding him. And maybe that's a confidence thing. Maybe that's a Bob Ritchie saying, "Hey, don't shoot it," because coaches do that. They say, "We don't want you shooting the ball. A possession with you shooting the ball is a turnover." They don't necessarily say that, but that's what coaches think. Legitimately, some guys, they don't want to shoot it, but I think that limits them offensively at times. And you don't have that problem when you're running Marcus Foster and Alex Williams at the 4 or 5. And I think they can guard well enough in a zone, or those guys can match up well enough to really work. Go ahead.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've noticed with Garrett Heen is if he catches the ball and he's not already facing the basket, like if he catches the ball at the top of the key and he has to turn towards the basket, he's not going to shoot it. But if he runs a pick and pop and somebody gets inside the paint and they can pass it directly back to him where he's already looking at the basket, that's when he'll shoot it. So it definitely has to be a confidence thing that he can only shoot from a certain angle.
Yeah, it really confuses me with him because there was times last year where he showed some real promise, and I always felt like, he just kind of played soft, but it was almost something that felt like it could be coached out of him. But go Cooper Bowser. Let me see some Cooper Bowser minutes, because we know for sure he's got a 7'2" wingspan or whatever and can defend. Now he's a little bit, to a lesser extent, like a Charles Lampton, where the coordination is not all there. But almost just let a young guy get minutes where he can impact defensively. I don't know, just food for thought, because there's definitely minutes for those guys. But I think finishing games, I would love to see them just run that death lineup out there. My Warriors back when they were so much fun. Now I'm sorry about that for you that they're horrible now, but back when they were fun, that's what they did. They said, let's put the best 5 players out here, and you're not going to be able to stop us on offense. And I think Furman's done that sometimes this year, and I love when they do that.
Yeah, I remember early in the year saying that, I kind of thought the best version of Furman included Smith, Witt, and Pegues all on the floor together, and they kind of started to get where those three were all starting together, and that got them into a bit of trouble because they should be closing together with Foster and Williams. So that is a great lineup for them.
Yeah, for sure. As for Samford, I don't think there's a lot to say. I mean, it was just a tough environment. Furman played them really well. Furman is who we thought they'd be preseason. Uh, a contender. I think those top 3 contenders are just there, right? Over
Yeah, they
halfway through
were
the season, they're still the top 3 there.
they
I
were
don't think
picked to
that's
win the
arguable.
league.
They're
They were picked to
healthy.
win
Yeah,
the
for
league
sure.
for a reason, 100%.
Wouldn't be surprising at all. So yeah, Samford sucks. You lost your win streak. 2-bid SoCon probably is over. I know
Yeah,
I shot up
and Furman
idea.
did ruin it. Yeah.
Yeah, I shot the idea of wow, they really did. I was saying 3-bid SoCon the other day jokingly, but Furman did ruin it. Like I said last episode that they could. What'd they do? They went and won the next 2. So thanks, Furman. They always ruin it for everyone. Let's move on. Chattanooga, Wofford. Chattanooga went on the road to Wofford, won 79-65. Don't look now. Don't look now, but Chattanooga's hot. They look good, and I'm cautiously optimistic about them. And I mean, I had to go back and watch. I had to go back and watch Furman and Samford today because I didn't feel like I got a full viewing experience because I was so encapsulated on Chattanooga because they are fun to watch when they're going, and they were going last night. Do you watch any of that game? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, that was kind of the one game that I really watched in full, like focused in on, kind of like you just said. But the funniest thing to me was that Wofford broadcast didn't have a scoreboard for about the first 10 minutes on ESPN Plus, and you would have thought Chattanooga was up 25 to nothing. Like they came out blazing. And so, that was so interesting to see. I kind of am starting to love what Dan Earl is doing. So every game he'll start Huff, Bonham, Millen, and Alexis. And that fifth spot, he's just going to plug and play a guy that he think fits best against whoever he's playing. So last night it was Miles Che. He made some comments post game about, the size of Wofford, so he wanted to come out with 3 guards, and he did. Some nights it may be Melson, some nights it may be Davis if they need to be big. So that's a very interesting thing. And then another thing with Earl is you can kind of see like they'll run a play, and if it breaks down, Earl will scream at all of them and he'll say play. And now like they're starting to get connected. So now when he yells play, they actually get into like playing freely. And now like early in the season, everyone was getting to know each other and like on the court, and the chemistry just wasn't there. So when he would yell play, they would just kind of run around. Now they're starting to get connected, and when that happens, they can still score. Um, you tweeted about it last night, but Sam Alexis just keeps getting better. Like I told you, um, I watched that game today, knowing that Sam Alexis went perfect from the field, and just like they're not like easy all dunks and stuff like that. Like he's shooting post fades and like skilled shots, so he's really helping this team offensively, and then defensively, he's a player of the year candidate. So they're really starting to figure it out.
Yeah, Sam Alexis is at the point, a little bit like MBJ to a lesser extent. If you don't double him in the post, he's scoring it. I mean, he can go left, he can go right. He had a sick little post fade over Dylan Bailey, which I was almost upset with. It was one of those, no, what are you? Oh, good shot. It was one of those moments because he had a smaller dude on him. He just felt like he was going to bully him to the rim, and then he shoots a fade away in the mid post and cashes it. He is. I mean, what a find he's been because I don't think he had really offers like that, and had some baby fat on him last year. We've talked about so much, and really showed promise last year. But his touch going both ways, you can tell he's worked a lot. Especially his jumper too looks better. He hasn't shot it particularly well, but it looked nasty last year. Yeah, he's been awesome. And then I'll also say Miles Che, like you said, he started. I'm team. Let's start Miles Che every single game if he can give us 9, 7, and 3. That's what I would say if I was Dan Earl, because I mean he looked great last night. He looked similar to what he was early in the year, and he just had lost all the confidence. If it just takes starting him, and I like all three of those guys together, if they play well, I feel like he gets lost sometimes with those guys. If he can bring that, you might as well start him every game. I'll also say Tyler Millen, praise to him. He's played really well. He's the answer that's at that wing spot. Shout out Randy Brady. He's shooting better. Demetrius Davis is bringing some defense. Good for him. He's still not really there offensively, but Randy Brady's been knocking down threes. And then I'll finish up with Bonham and Huff. Maybe this is a hot take. I don't know. Bonham and Huff, when they're going, most fun duo in the SoCon to watch. Is that a hot take? I don't know. I mean, there's nobody, in my opinion, that I have more fun watching when they're going because it's deep threes, Bonham getting to the rim. Bonham has such good body control. Like, he'll just jump up and take a hit and triple clutch. And, I mean, they're so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't name a more fun duo. And it starts with those two are so connected, not only on the court, but off the court too. Like, they'll tell you, like, they did that little shoot around with the SoCon coverage guy, whatever his name is. Like, they are best friends. They're roommates. They're around each other 24/7. So I think that's where it stems from.
Yeah, no, they've been really fun, and they go as Chattanooga goes as they go, and they've been going lately. That's been a really fun duo. Oh yeah, and let me also say Jan Zedek has kind of found a little bit of rhythm the past few games. We'll see, but Jan Zedek's been fairly impressive the past few games, and he brings a whole nother dimension when he's going.
Yeah, super impressive for Chattanooga is, I think we're kind of overlooking the fact that they just went on the road and won 3 straight conference games away from home, which, maybe wasn't the greatest of competition with ETSU and Mercer and Wofford, but, that's still hard to do. And in all 3 of these games, they've shown this ability to, like, the team that they're playing will make a run, and they just always seem to have a counterpunch, which is a quality that we see in good teams. So it's good to see them start to develop that.
Let me finish with this, actually, because this just popped up in my head. I've got to end the broadcast. I don't know how to say it. Underrating what Jake Stevens did last year, because I hear it on every single broadcast. They bring up Jake Stevens and how he got hurt, and they'll say, let me think what they say. They'll say, like, Jake Stevens might have been player of the year last year if he hadn't got hurt. No, let's fix that up. Jalen Lawson was awesome. Mike Bothwell was awesome. But it was at the end of the year, it was like, who's going to win between those two? When Jake Stevens was going, he was it was his award. Like, he won like every player of the week coming into, when he got hurt. And I was starting on Twitter. I was starting hashtag Jake Stevens All-American. That's how good he was playing. He was legit playing at All-America level. So let me fix that. That's like, I'm joking a little bit, but I've heard that on 3 or 4 broadcasts now. Like, oh, he may have won player of the year if he hadn't got hurt. He would have challenged Lawson. No, he was dominating that race.
Yeah.
Whenever he was so good when he was playing. And he came back and picked up right where he was in the SoCon tournament. But yeah, that's something that I like. I don't like when people underestimate things, like, or act like things were way simpler back then. Another thing is somebody on a SoCon broadcast of the week was talking about how big of a thing it was that JP Pegues wasn't an all SoCon player last year. And Bob Ritchie brought that up last year at the SoCon tournament. And it was like, he finished the year fine, but he just had a big SoCon tournament. And Bob Ritchie was like, hey, this guy wasn't on the all SoCon team. So it's like, yeah, he didn't do anything. He was good, but he was not that level of player. Let's go on to the Citadel beat Mercer 68-66. One of the more unreal games I've seen, in that I had it on and I stopped watching because I thought the game was over. I thought Mercer was up 11 with like 4 minutes to go. Citadel doesn't really have the offensive firepower like that. Sure enough, they come back and win. Mercer falls apart. I guess, it was 61. I think it was 60-49. Finished 68-66. And I really want to talk about Greg Gary. And I don't want to call for his job. I mean, it's mid-major college basketball. But it's just been a poor job there. I mean, it's in his 4 years right now. He's finished 4th in his first year. Good for him, but it wasn't any crazy. I think he was like 11-7 in SoCon play or something around that number. I can't remember. I saw it the other day. Then he finished 7th. Then he finished 8th. Then he finished 8th. This year, we're finishing 8th to 10th. He probably won't get any higher than that unless ETSU falls apart, who we'll talk about here in a minute. I don't know how to explain this because somebody else said, oh, well, Mercer's the hardest place to play other than Citadel and VMI. And maybe, yeah, I mean, but it's not like they're not a military school. They're not handicapped like that. They just, I almost thought this offseason, and I get bringing them back a little bit, but what promise was there? You know, a little bit like ETSU, bringing in Brooks Savage. There was no promise coming into this year if they kept Desmond Oliver, and what they do, they fired him, and who's mad about that? Who's mad they fired him? Who in Mercer's fan base would have been upset if Greg Gary wasn't there? And it's just confusing. There's no David Thomas is fine. There's just clearly not been any big recruits or a lot of recruiting coming in. I know they got a transfer from Tennessee a few years ago that had a good final season of eligibility, but it's like that's all they ever get. Jalen McCreary, for some reason, comes off the bench. Well, I don't know what big brain stuff this is. Their best player comes off the bench, and it's not even like I can't even think of a good situation. It's not like a J.R. Smith, Jamal Crawford situation where it's one of their best 5, but is a good bench leader. Like, no, this is your best player you're bringing off the bench. Same with David Thomas, really, too. He's been one of their better players recently. He comes off the bench. I don't understand a lot of the stuff they do. There's not a lot of hope. David Thomas is hope, and that's it. I think this is it for him there, and it sucks, but yeah, it's just a tough. There's no promise. There's nothing that gets me excited.
Yeah, an interesting statistic I saw that I told you earlier is Jalen McCreary somehow still has a higher usage rate than Vontaris Woolbright. I don't know how that happens, especially with him coming off the bench, but I don't know the situation with Gary very well, but maybe Mercer has hope that he's from the Matt Painter coaching tree or something like that. But I really, that's about all I see. But I guess that's something to cling on to. But I would not be surprised if this was it. If this was it for him.
So let's pull up. Let me see if I can get the stream to work. New coach. You learn something new about me every day. History of Mercer basketball. We're this year with Greg Gary. By the way, one season over 5. He has 2 seasons over 500. He had non D1 wins in this year. He has 1 season over 500 in his time at Mercer against Division I teams. But they might need to hire me because the last gold, Joe Dan Gold, in 1973-74 went 16-8. My grandfather, that's who that is. I'm not saying a gold member can push him back to an acceptable record, but I might be the man for the job. Is all I'm saying. We might have to pass down to me. I'll take over that job. I'll start Jalen McCreary. I'll do all that. We'll recruit some players from the transfer portal. We'll do something to get us back right next year, Mercer. So my phone number, email me, email 2bitsocon@gmail, and I'll give you my contact information if y'all want to bring me on. I am looking for a job right now too. Let me add that to that. The final game of the night, ETSU squeaked by, I don't know, VMI. Escaped 74-73. Really bad. I said they're painful to watch offensively. I'm upgrading that to they make me want to gouge my eyes out. I hate watching ETSU's offense, and it's so confusing. I just don't know I can't even pinpoint the problem. I just know they've got some good players. Kamari Peterson, Jaden Seymour. Jaden Seymour deserves no blame, I will say. Ebi Asamoah is nice. He doesn't do anything for anyone else, really. He is kind of just a shot creator for himself. And granted, there's guys like that work out, and he has, but they're just so confusing on both ends. They let Brennan Watkins dominate them in the clutch last night, and shout out Jaden Parker. He's the one guy who I just don't know if there's defined roles and accepted roles. Maybe Jaden Parker is the one that has, he doesn't try to do too much. He plays defense, rebounds, finishes when needed. He had a big block on Brennan Watkins to win that game. Watkins split a kind of a hedge ball screen defense, split it, got to the rim, and Parker chased it down. They're just so confusing, and they deserve to lose. I mean, I'll say too, it was hurt me so much. They called a timeout. It was a 1-point game. The final score 73-74, and they had the ball. Didn't really have a look. Called a timeout, and out of timeout, they got the ball to Jaden Seymour for a step back contested three. It was it was a horrible look. I'm like, what did we draw up there, or did nobody run it? I mean, they're just hard to watch, and I don't know what the solution is because I was high on them, and maybe I've had some recency bias watching them coming into SoCon play where I thought, they can physical some teams into wins, stay in games because they're athletic. And last night, that's all really they did was just win because they were more athletic and more talented than VMI. There was no, they went out and won that game. They just managed to not lose it, if that makes sense. It was just it was a tough watch, and I don't know what to say about them.
Yeah, just looking at the box score, there's no way that VMI has had less turnovers than any of their D1 opponents until yesterday. ETSU turned the ball over 20 times to VMI. Like, VMI is supposed to be the get-right game for all the contenders in the SoCon, and you eke out a 1-point win. Like, that's terrifying, in all honesty.
Yeah, you're right, and it was just a tough watch. And I will say this: I usually could care less what happens. I am. Most people that listen to this know that I just graduated from Chattanooga. Matt too. I've never been. Maybe it just wasn't stress. I've never had dislike for just from a fandom aspect, which I'm pretty unbiased most of the time. I've never had a dislike for ETSU like that. Maybe the rivalry died down. Like, it's just like any other game to me, and I know it means something to the schools. But I was actively rooting against ETSU last night against VMI, even though I picked ETSU, just because how bad they looked. They deserved to lose that game. It was really bothering me watching that. I was like, please, basketball guys, do not let them win this game with how poorly they're playing right now. It was a tough watch. So we'll finish off here.
ETSU's offense is so ugly that it turned you against them.
Yeah, that really is.
To root for VMI.
Yeah, I was rooting. I was actively like, please, VMI. Please, Brennan Watkins, 5'8" self. Please, dude. I was hoping he was somehow going to finish that layup. I mean, just because they deserved to lose it. And maybe that would have needed to be the turning point, was losing to VMI. And instead, they sneak by with a win. And sometimes guys see themselves winning and don't think anything needs to change. And we'll see with that one. Let's finish here. Games on Saturday. We haven't done these live or on the podcast in a while. We'll make picks. Now, maybe we didn't prepare for this, but we're going to go over the games. Let's start off first. Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, the Citadel heads to Chattanooga. I've got an easy answer for this. It's going to be Chattanooga for me. What would you say?
Yeah, I made a joke before we started recording that Chattanooga would go on the road and win 3 games and then come back home and lose to the Citadel. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm going Chattanooga too.
And it wouldn't be surprising. And that's exactly, I hope that's why I'm cautiously optimistic about Chattanooga, is their inconsistency sometimes does worry me. Let's go to Samford, ETSU. Again, I just crapped on ETSU for 5-10 minutes, so you know where I'm going there. I'm going Samford. What about you?
Yeah, I'm coming off the loss. I'm gonna go Samford, and they're gonna turn ETSU over 40 times. Something like that.
That could happen, especially with Karan Boyd is out, and he's been a pretty decent player for him. Now he's been out for a little bit now, and he is not the reason they're struggling being without him. But Struthers has turned the ball over. Kamari Peterson kind of gets a little out of control sometimes. I could definitely see them trying to. ETSU is probably the one team that doesn't need to play at Samford's pace because they shoot it horribly. It's been bad. I don't know. Maybe they just don't have shooters like that. They've shot it so bad this year. Almost like to an extent, they put together a team this year. It's a tough situation Brooks Savage came into. Like, I'm not judging him off this year. I think of last year with Dan Earl and Chattanooga. They were running, no hate to the guy. He played his heart out. They're running Jamal Walker out there to play in a system that chucks a three every time, and Jamal Walker might have the worst looking jump shot in Division I basketball that last year. It was bad, but that's how it feels a little bit with ETSU. Like, they may not have all the guys that they need, because at the end of the day, you got to put a roster together and try to be competitive. Let's go VMI, Western Carolina, easy. And the more I look at this slate, you might need to parlay all 5 of our picks. We might go 5 for 5 the same here. VMI, Western Carolina. I got Western Carolina. I don't think there's much of a good get-right game for them there.
Mm-hmm. I got Western too.
Coming at a good time, because they have, like we said, they've struggled. Not even struggled, but they've lost 3 straight. That should be one. Maybe VMI, maybe we're both wrong, and we thought the Citadel and ETSU were not shocking that they stayed with them. Maybe VMI turned the corner and they're about to go on a little here. Maybe
ESPN gives VMI a 3.3% chance to win, so it's probably not even value there.
Yeah. All right. Furman at Wofford. That's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm taking Furman. Furman is the hottest team in the SoCon now. I think that's the new thing. Samford's no longer in that spot. It's got to be Furman fully healthy.
Yeah, that honestly, looking at the board, may be the best game of the day, but Furman is surging at the right time. I'm going to go Furman too. Which sucks, because we're not going to have any, difficult picks. Like, we're not going to oppose each other, so
I may have to take set to get back in the lead. Somehow I've choked away.
You're gonna take Mercer right here.
Yeah, I choked away a 4-point or something like that lead on our picks. I'll go finally Mercer, UNCG. I'm gonna take UNCG, and I'm gonna take Mikal Brown-Jones to stay hot and carry UNCG to like an 8-point win. Mikal Brown-Jones is gonna put up 35 plus on Mercer's heads. What do you say?
Yeah, I've got Greensboro too. That's not really a fair game in my eyes, but yeah, it's going to happen.
All right, that's going to be it for today's episode. Not a whole lot special. And looking at this slate for Saturday, we just went from a great slate to, maybe it surprises us, but these games on paper don't look, it looks like all simple picks. Let's hope for some competitive games this weekend. If not, we'll probably be back next Thursday for another episode. Appreciate those that keep on watching, commenting on YouTube, commenting on our Twitter. I love interacting with you guys. I'm sure Matt does too. And we like making it. So thanks to everyone who keeps listening. We'll see you guys in the next one.